After 2 years, in this episode, we finally find out what has been going wrong with my Ferrari, and there is a problem with the head. However, there is more than one potential solution, and I'm not quite sure which way to go. We also remove the front head, and finally check the state of the bottom end, which initially looks pretty good. But I also find a couple of things that worry me. Everybody and welcome, I'm Jack and this is the troublesome InfluEnzo, the car to which I've been trying to get to the bottom of the problem that it has, the oil burning problem, for the last 2 years. Now, just a little bit of background, both heads on this engine were rebuilt, so the heads should have been absolutely fine, and yet, from when I started running the car, it had oil burning problems, so the plugs would gum up and it would start to misfire. All sorts of diagnosis over the last 2 years failed to give up a definite answer. So what I decided to do was take off the easiest head, the rear head, and examine it and just rule it out. You may have seen in the last episode that I did that, and there were traces in the exhaust ports of oil. However, again, if it had been burning in the bores, perhaps it would have left those same traces. So what I did was I took that head to the people who had built it previously, and we examined it together. Now, they were really good. They said, bring the head, we'll open it up in front of you. If you want to bring a witness, if you want to bring anyone, bring your own mechanic, happy to do that. So I was really reassured that the guys were very happy to deal with this very openly. When I took it there, we had an initial look, and again, I wasn't 100% clear what was happening. But once the caps were taken off and the springs, and we could see the valve stem seals, it became clear that these little fellas were definitely the problem. What had happened is that on at least 3 cylinders on the exhaust side, or at least 2 on the exhaust side, they had become loose. So they're supposed to hold on to the valve stem, and then the valve moves up and down, and this scrapes any excess oil off before it goes into the combustion chamber. However, when they are loose like this, obviously oil will seep through. There were 2 on the exhaust side. I think there was 1 definitely on the inlet that was loose and 1 that was coming loose. So the guys were really straightforward, very transparent. They didn't try and feed me any stories. They said they really didn't know how it could have happened. Of course, there are 2 possibilities. One is that there was a faulty batch of these parts, which I supplied. The second is that there was a problem during installation. However, I think we also need to bear in mind that these valve stem seals are a very old sort of design, and they're not really very good. Most modern engines and some of the old American V8s, they've been upgraded to a modern design. This is sort of hard nylon outer with this outer sort of spring collar is quite an old design. It's not a very good design, and I've spoken to other builders who say that there have been problems when using these plastic ones with them popping off as they have before. So to sum up, we can't exactly be sure what happened. Maybe it was a bad batch of these. I don't know what the issue was. Going forward, we have to decide what to do though. Are we going to try with another batch? Also have to be open. The ones that I got are aftermarket. They are good aftermarket, and they are an upgraded version of the original ones that were available, but still, they are not OEM. So that is something else. But I've had a look at the OEM ones. They look identical. It doesn't mean that they are. But we're now going to have to make a decision of what to do going forward. Also, that head, the second head, although it is not burning anywhere near as much oil, I think there are small traces of oil there. And of course, with what's happened so far, definitely isn't going to be left in the car. So first of all, today I'm going to take that off. Then I'm going to go back to the builders. We're going to have a look at that head as well, see what's happening on that side of things, and then take it from there. But it does look like there is light at the end of the tunnel. In terms of the bores, I've had a quick initial look. They look really good, so I'm quite happy with those. But we'll have a more in-depth look later on in the video. In order to take this head out, I remember from before, the cans have to be taken out where they are, because otherwise there's not enough room to lift it out. So something I learned from the first disassembly, which is really useful, is always count what you're taking out, because if something's fallen down or fallen into a hole of part of the engine you don't want it to be in, well, then you'll know if something's missing. If you have everything, once you've taken them out, then that's a good way of being sure. I'm not going to bore you with a step-by-step process of how to take all the various things off. I'm just going to show you. So here's the other set of cams. They are now off with all the various bits. And also, these are all the parts that I had to take out in order to be able to get to a stage where that head can come out. There's only a couple of things left to do now. The main one is take those exhaust headers off, which are in an extremely tricky position on this car. A real pain to get to, and I'll just show you that because they are a bit tricky. Then we will take this head as well to the builders. We'll take it apart there, have a look and see if there's any damage there, see if there's any oil in the exhaust ports. And of course, we've got to check the bores and make a decision on what I'm going to do about the replacement valve guides. Am I going to go for OEM? Am I going to go for an upgraded sort of version, but that's not specifically made for Ferrari? These are all quite important things to think about. So the exhaust headers are tucked away right under the head that I've got to take out. So you can't really get to them from the top at all. The best way to get to them is from underneath, and as you'll see, that is a very tight sort of squeeze to get to them there. Some of them you can't even see. So this is what I need to use to get to those exhaust manifold bolts. And it's got a little wobble bit at the top as well. There's the exhaust manifold, squeezed up there, and you can just about see those top pipes there. I can't get a hand up there to show, oh I can actually. That's one of the bolts on the side as well, and here are the others, and there's a couple of bolts on these two in particular, the middle two pipes, which are really hard to get to, which you can maybe just sort of spot there. It's taken me quite a long time to get that head off. As you can see, it's much less accessible, which is one of the issues. It's come free, and I've just tried to guide it up as much as possible. Because of the angle on my own, last time I had someone helping me, it's quite difficult to get off. And then I realised as well, I'd almost got it off, and then the front studs for the cam cover, I'd forgotten, I think from last time, they have to be taken out there. So you have to take the studs out before it will clear the bulkhead. So I've just been double nutting them all and then just taking them off, and hopefully after that I'll be able to finally lift it out. Let's give it another go. I've put some boarding in here, try and make sure I don't go through it, but come on. Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, how happy am I? It's out. I did it on my own this time. Now this, I think, is really interesting, because when you look at the exhaust ports on this head, it clearly isn't burning anywhere near as much oil as the other one, but there are traces of oil coming through the valve guides again. So it'll be really interesting to see what state those seals are in when we take it apart. So I'm going to take it off, we'll take it apart and have a look at it together. But really interesting this, and really curious to see what the seals look like under there. I've loaded up the head and I'm on my way to go and take it to the builders so we can have a look over it and see what's going on. But as well, my friend Andy, who's got really good connections in the sort of Ferrari world, has obtained for me one of these sort of Golf Mark II 8 valve seals, which I think is a more modern design and which other people have apparently used. So we're not sure if it's the right size or not, but I'm going to take it to the builders and we'll have a look at it together and see if that is one of the options maybe that I should consider going forward. So really looking forward to seeing what's going on with that head and if this new seal type works as well. I'm here at the builders and we've had a look at this front head. The seals have been taken off, or one of the seals has been taken off. We've had a good look at the others, and although nowhere near as bad as the other head, where some of them were actually physically loose, you can see that some of them have started to move. So I guess that's probably why there are traces of oil in the exhaust ports. So it's a good job that we took this one out and checked it as well. Now, This is the original type of valve that was used when we rebuilt it, which is the kind of standard sort of Teflon, they call it, seal. This one is from a Golf. It's a Mark II 8 valve, and it is a much more modern design. It's a little bit more supple, and it's something that I have been advised might be a better option than these original ones. We did try and fit them today, and it didn't quite go to plan, so I don't think it's exactly the right dimension. It works well in terms of the valve stem itself, but where it goes onto the guide, I think there is a tiny discrepancy there, so it didn't go on quite straight when we were trying to fit it. So I'm really happy with the way that the guys who built these are dealing with all this. They said they're going to look them over, they're going to re-lap the valves, they're going to clean them all up. When we refit the seals, so we're trying to decide at the moment how best to do that. When we do that, I'll be back here, I'll film that as well, but we will kind of find the best possible solution, I think, going forward on that. They're also helping me with the parts that I need, obviously, to rebuild, because there was loads of gaskets and things like that, taking these out, putting them back in, Ferrari prices, you know what I mean. So all in all, as I said, it's one of those unfortunate things where you can never be exactly sure what happened, but one thing for sure is I also don't particularly like the design of these, so I think if at all possible we will try and use a seal with a different design going forward. Perhaps one from Ford, perhaps Volkswagen. I'm still sort of doing research on that. But as previously mentioned, I know quite a few people who race these and they use the different designs, so I think that's quite telling. So there is still the question about what seals we're going to use when we do the rebuild, but there is something which is possibly even more important, and that is, what about the state of this bottom end? Now clearly the oil burning, at least a vast majority of it, was coming from the top end. I mean, that is proven, that is pretty obvious. But let's have a look and see what the state of this is, because many of you have always said, oh, why are you just doing things piecemeal? Why don't you just take the whole engine out and rebuild the whole thing? And I think, well, the reason is it's easier just typing that on a keyboard than actually doing it. So first of all, taking it out, I need the room. I don't have enough room really to do that comfortably. Secondly, if there is no need to do it, I'm just not going to do it. These bottom ends are known to be pretty strong and should be able to do well in excess of 100,000 miles, which this is just approaching. So let's just see what it looks like. Now, I had already turned the engine over a few times, so I have seen these bores in other positions as well. And to be honest, they all look pretty good. So the cross hatching is still visible. The top of where the piston sort of goes, normally, as long as you can't feel a ridge with your finger, I know it's slightly differently coloured, but if you can't feel a ridge, then that means that's okay too, and they're all pretty good on that side. There is one cylinder here on the front bank which I was slightly worried about, because there was a weird mark on the side, not scoring as such. I tried to clean it up, and I don't know what it is, but you can't feel it with your finger or your fingernail. So I think the rule of thumb is it's nothing to worry about, but I will double check that. It feels like such an epic journey to have got to this point again. You know, I got this car 2 years ago. It's never really run properly, apart from isolated incidents with new spark plugs where I got an idea of what these cars are really like to drive. I've had to do so much to it. There's still a few other bits to do as well. There's a little bit of rust on the battery tray that I need to fix. I think I'm probably going to look at the suspension, so the journey isn't finished. And of course, I've got to rebuild the engine and see if this time round it works. I'm getting a mate to come and have a look at it as well, who's a mechanic, my friend Anton, just to double check that the bores are all good for definite. If they are, at least, it means no bottom end needs to, you know, I don't need to take that apart, so that is excellent news. I am going to redo the gaskets for the sump, for the gearbox sump, because that is leaking, and possibly at the same time also the gasket for the gear shift rod as well. So finally I might also have a fairly dry bottom end as well. But ultimately it's just going to be the top end that we're doing. I think that using different valve guides, which I think we will end up doing, I'm quite confident it will work properly. So all in all, it's just I'm quite happy. I know some of you are saying, why haven't you burnt it? You're so patient. But It's always finding a problem is what makes me happiest. It's not knowing that makes me really sort of unsettled. So on the whole, I'm really pretty pleased. Just a couple of things before you go. First of all, I have a Patreon account. So if you want to support the channel, I'd really appreciate that. I'm obviously trying not to do the kind of infomercials and stuff that some of the other channels do, because I just hate them. I mean, some of them do it really successfully, I think, and integrate them really well. But I'd rather not do them, and anything that you can give towards Patreon really helps. And lastly, if you haven't subscribed, please do. There is a full playlist of videos on this car. So if you're coming for the first time, do have a look at those videos, because there are so many other incredible things that happened while I had it. From dropping it on its jack and damaging the side of it, to finding out why it was cutting out, only turning on one side, and you won't believe that one. So there's loads of stuff to see on that. And lastly, thank you to everybody who has been watching my videos, especially also the other stuff too. And I really look forward to seeing you for the next one.